I'm Brent Leary.
I'm Paul Greenberg.
You said that like you didn't quite know, and if you don't know, then how do I know that this is going to be CRM Playaz? Excuse the intrusion version.
I honestly can't tell you.
Well, I can tell you one thing. I need a close up for this. It's just the Rams against the world. Okay?
Whoa.
There it is. Yeah, I said it. Where's Bob Fagel when I need him?
Oh, he might be here. So, what's that old saying? Something about what you wish for.
Hmm.
I can't remember, but basically, it's be careful about what you wish for. So
Well,
I hear.
it is. It does feel like it's the Rams against the world. There it is. All rise, and you literally had to rise so
I
we could
know.
all see it.
Well, actually, you should have risen too. It did say all rise.
Oh,
There. Thank you. But I will support Rams against the world.
that's right, Bob.
That's it.
It's just like to say. Oh, and look who it is.
What a shock.
Isn't that
I
the way
said,
it should
Be
be?
careful what you wish for. The leprechauns have been busy, man.
Yeah, and they all live up in Boston.
Apparently.
Yeah.
It's a pot of beer at the end of the rainbow there, though.
A keg. There.
That's right, AKA.
Yeah, there it is. So hey, it's Friday afternoon, and it looks great outside. Although I'm still sheltering for the most part.
We are
Bob.
literally in a massive rainstorm. We have been for like on and off for the last 3 hours.
Oh,
I know. I got out, but listen, man, for the first time since shelter in place came in, I went out. Not the out, but I mean, I went out to do stuff. Like this morning, I had to go to the post office to pick something up, which they have just massively screwed up delivering. And it took 25 minutes before they even found what I was there. And I had to, you go into the post office, you're wearing a mask. There's only like 5 people in the whole post office, so social distancing was not hard at all. And you had to go to a blue Dutch door and you had to hit a bell, and then they would open the window part of the door to get if you're picking up a package. That's the only way you could do it there. You couldn't go to the general area. I was driving back and I realized I had to get I've been trying to get some paper towels and toilet paper and those kind of paper goods. So I was driving by Food Line and said, you know what, I'm out. Might as well do that. So I put on my mask. Usually I do that with deliveries, but they never have it. So put on my mask, went in, got paper towels, toilet paper, some other stuff. And then I was thinking, I need to go. I really need a haircut really badly. And I know you're supposed to do by appointment. But I didn't know the phone number of the place I went. So I drove up to that place to get the phone number, wrote it down. I said, well, you know what? I'm sitting in the parking lot. I called in. I said, hey, you got time for me now? I'm literally sitting in your parking lot. Can I have an appointment? He said, come on in. So I came in, got a haircut, mask on the whole time. And he had his mask on. And it was like me and one other guy was waiting. And that was it in the barber and one barber. And so, what you do in situations like that, because these guys are really, the one thing we talk about, all these other people suffering, barbers are really suffering, especially little family barbers.
yeah.
So haircuts, the place I go to are like $17, regular place, right? So I gave them 40 and with no change.
Wow. That's awesome.
Again, they're not making money at all. I'm not suffering in the slightest when it comes to income. So, because tech world just has managed to get through at least to now, but these guys really are hurting. And so he told me that they're not even allowed to have any more barbers at this point until next week when others will be coming back. Right. So it's not easy. And he had people walking in who, because there was a guy waiting, left because there's only one barber. So they're losing business on the spot, even though people want to get haircuts. So
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's tough. I haven't seen a barber in a while because I bought my own clippers, and it's really easy for me to just and I'm done. So
I not me, man.
Anyway, I wanted to introduce the latest addition to the Excuse the Intrusion family.
Ooh.
Now I gotta warn you guys, he's not having the best day. So hear him out, and maybe we can help cheer him up. So let me introduce you guys to the latest member of the Excuse the Intrusion family.
I'm having a very bad day. I am in no mood. This, today, is one of the worst days that I've had in a long time. I'm not in the mood to play with anybody. My brother Bomani Jones is in another booth looking at me. I love that brother. I don't want to talk to you today. I've got producers who have been very, very good to me. I've got bosses who have been very, very good to me. I've got co-workers that I love. I don't want to talk to anybody. My godson, Jonathan Barnes, is sitting right in front of me, and I don't want to look at him. I'm ticked off. I mean, this is just, and Sean Farnham, but if you are a Knick fan, this is the equivalent of being kidnapped, stored in a basement, being tortured, and then they let you out when you're of no use to anybody. I mean, you just can't make this up. I'm telling you right now, I got an attitude with everybody.
Baby Stephen A. Smith.
Making his inaugural appearance on Excuse the Intrusion, that was baby Stephen A. And as Alan said, that was awesome.
Sadly, he has nothing else to say.
He doesn't want to talk to anybody right
None of
now.
us. We tried, believe me.
I know.
The best ever.
You can best believe that will not be the last time that you see baby Stephen A. on Excuse the Intrusion.
And he does have colleagues, of age colleagues. So
I just love that.
That's the best, probably the best thing on the internet.
It's definitely the best thing on ESPN right now. Ooh.
Yeah.
Well, ever since The Last Dance finalized.
No, I actually think this is better.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you can't go wrong with baby Stephen A.
No.
Okay, so
Fine.
I want to pop up. Let's see, what would it pop up here? Okay, so things are happening just all the time now. And one thing that happened today, let's show this. Anybody out there who knows the name George Preston Marshall?
Well, I know I do for sure, but I live in this area, man.
Yeah, well, if you happen to be a fan of the Washington team in the NFL, I'm trying to
not say the rest of their names.
Yeah, exactly. He was the owner of that team for several years, probably throughout the 40s, 50s, 60s. I don't know, maybe even the 70s. I don't know.
Yeah, no, Jack Hen Cook came. Well, maybe the early 70s because Jack Hen Cook came in after that.
Yeah. So he owned that team for years. And if I'm not mistaken, was Washington like the last team to integrate?
To my knowledge, the answer is yes, although I'm not 100% on that.
It's something like that. If they weren't the last, they were one of the last, and he was the main reason. The dude was a straight up racist.
Yeah, outright.
He didn't try to hide it or fake it or anything. He was straight up like that. So they had this. Go ahead.
No, see, look at the comment of yodeling intensifies. Excellent. About damn time.
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up. So here is what it looked like, before they took it down, and then gone.
Thank God.
Out of here.
Eyesore, man.
Now, as we were actually talking to our buddy Vinny Merchant Donnie earlier today, and as we were talking to Vinny, you brought up the fact, or no, maybe he brought up the fact that it seemed like there was another statue that went down, and I hadn't even heard of that one going down. But I think I have it here.
Yeah, it's Calvin Griffith and the Twins. Was that it? Yeah. Yeah.
statues are just coming down all over the place.
Well, the thing with this guy, take a look, read the quote in the article on ESPN. It's on the first, second, third, fourth paragraph.
I tell you why we came to Minnesota.
Yeah. You'll see that was a remark that ultimately led to
Yeah.
the statue being removed. The guy was like in the history of the Twins, he was like the beloved founder of the Senate, not the founder of the Senators, but the guy who like brought them to Minnesota. He was kind of even more, in his own weird way, more deadly than George Preston Marshall, because he was more benign about his racism, right? It played out. I don't know where the Twins were in integration. I mean, I know they had, in the 60s, they were integrated. They had Tony Oliva, and they had dozens of actual Black and Latino players. But on the whole, he was very quiet about the racism. But that quote brought it out, and the rest of his existence, people knew what he really was.
I feel a need just to make sure, because I don't know if it's that visible to see, but the whole quote is, I tell you why we came to Minnesota. It was when we found out you only had 15,000 blacks here. Black people don't go to ball games, but they'll fill up a wrestling ring, and literally wrestling, not
Right.
wrestling ring, and put up such a chant, it'll scare you to death. We came here because you've got good, hardworking white people here.
Unbelievable.
That was said to like a newspaper or something, because he wasn't just talking to a buddy of his. This had to have been printed somewhere.
No, it was a speaking engagement.
All right, so he's doing a speaking gig. I wonder who he was speaking to.
Yeah, Ku Klux Klan.
Him and George Preston Marshall were getting together one day.
That's right. Again, Griffith had a much more fatherly image, right? George Preston Marshall was, aside from being a racist, was a grouchy racist, right? It was like he was not a nice person, even fake, right? He couldn't even fake being vaguely like human or humane in any way. I mean, he was just generally nasty. Calvin Griffith managed to be benign at many different times in his existence as an owner. I mean, I remember actually when I was young seeing him. I want to say it was an interview on TV somewhere, and he was very paternal, I guess would be the word, and it came across that way too. But that comment pretty much exposes his paternalism for what it was, right? Which is just pure race. He's purely racist. I mean, and now it's 2 in the last 2 days, I think now, right?
Yeah. I wonder if he was related to D.W. Griffith, because it kind of would fit.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Birth of a white nation.
Of a white baseball team.
That's right.
All right. So speaking of baseball, here we are. Baseball is just making a mess of this whole thing.
Do you know that theory, that famous theory about there's this thing about like conspiracy theory about Freemasonry and the third eye on the pyramid? Yeah. Right, there's this like third eye, and if you look at the pyramid on the back of a dollar, it's got like a third eye, like an eye up here. I'm telling you, so the baseball has managed to do this: blacken the left eye, right eye, blacken the left eye, and somehow blacken the third eye. I mean, it's like I've never in my life seen a league damage itself so badly, with greedy billionaires fighting with greedy millionaires over money, 100% over revenue and nothing else, at a point where the entire world, and at least the country, could use kind of the pick-me-up that baseball gave us, for example, right after 9/11. They were very conscious of their role at 9/11. Right now, the only thing they care about is screwing the other side, and they don't give a damn about fans.
Yeah, it's pretty messed up. I mean, I was going to ask you about this too. I don't know if you had a chance to see it, but just this past Sunday, they had the latest ESPN 30 for 30, and it was called the Long Summer.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, and of course it was around the 1998 season, the season of McGuire and Sosa, and it was really interesting because we weren't that far removed from '94 with the strike, and like the first time in I don't know how long that there was no World Series because they went out on strike, and the whole thing about money again. They totally lost I think they started the '94 season, and then it end before the All-Star break. I can't remember exactly when it ended, but
Yeah, I think there was they had played a little more than a half season or a half season by the time it ended. A little more, if I believe, 90 something games, maybe. I don't remember exactly.
And I know they had played a pretty significant amount of games, and that actually kind of made it worse because the NBA, and I think it was '98 or '99 one. They also were they didn't start the season on time. They went out on strike where I think the owners locked them out in '98. But at least they got back in time I think they had a 50 game season, and 50 out of compared to 82 games. They were able to get it in, and eventually I think San Antonio beat somebody, maybe the Knicks or maybe the Pacers, somebody. But at least they had they got the season in. Baseball in '94 starts the year, then goes out on strike, and then never come back. So baseball was almost wiped off the face of the earth. When you say baseball is America's pastime, it was almost like baseball has passed its time.
Yeah.
And then '98 came around, and it made you feel good at the time.
Well, I mean, regardless of the issues around steroids that came later, that season was magic. I still remember. Well, first of all, the Yankees, of course, had actually their best winning season in history. If you count playoff games, they won 121 games that year, right? They were almost 100% unbeatable. So it was one of the most, and it was a true team. There wasn't any player who was a Mark McGuire standout or anything like that on that team. There was a whole group of great players. I mean, Bernie Williams and, Jeter and Posada and Mariano and Andy Pettit and so on and so forth. But they were a great team. That was even overshadowed by the race, which is what this was about, between Sosa and McGuire, and actually the good relationship of Sosa and McGuire. That came across really well about just they had a really good, positive relationship and were not vindictive toward each other. Competitive, of course, they're ball players, but not vindictive in the slightest. They were okay, right? And it basically, if truthfully, it not only saved baseball, but it also elevated it again so that, look, I mean, regardless of all the issues of the last few years, baseball, as far as attendance figures and revenue and salaries that they're paying these greedy baby players,
That's greedy baby players, not
that's right.
Greedy baby Stephen A.
Well,
Just want to make sure.
That's why he does that, so he can deal with the baby players, the infantile players. So, but that's the thing. It's like it basically made the sport incredibly lucrative and popular again, and people, the attendance figures, even when they suffer, are still off the charts, pretty much by comparison to everybody, right? So, it saved the game. This one, I'm not sure what's going to save it, really.
I don't think that if they don't play this season and it's because of money, it's not because of health concerns. We're seeing in the NBA that there are folks who seem to be legitimately worried about their safety, and that's understandable. But that's not the case of what's going on with baseball.
No, they're literally, of all the leagues. I think I said this last week too, but I'm happy to reiterate it. Of all the leagues, and this is my favorite sport yet, they are literally the absolute worst at handling this crisis. The worst by a long shot. They're the league that's damaging themselves. I don't think it's beyond repair, but it can get to that point if this insane acrimony doesn't stop. And the problem is, so for example, that said, the 70 games suggested by the players, that was just immediately rejected out of hand. Forget like, let me think about it. It was like, no, 60, right? And the players saying, no, 70. Now, somebody on the Major League Baseball channel network on Sirius XM radio was speculating that, and I'm not sure why he picked this number, that if the commissioner was smart, if Manfred was smart, he'd come out and say, we'll have a 63 game season. Let's do that. I don't know why he picked 63. I mean, you would think still leans a little to the owners there, but I mean, to the owners, but the normal thing you would say was 65, right between the two. So everyone looks, comes out okay. But he somehow thinks the players will accept that. I don't know. Right now, you know what? I'll tell you what, guys, just completely shut up. Don't say a goddamn word to anyone publicly. When you're done with whatever it is you're doing, either start a season or don't start a season. Let us know, yeah, there's going to be one, or no, there isn't. That's the end of that. And that's it. The rest of it, just be quiet and go away and leave us alone and stop denigrating the game that's paying you all this money that you're complaining about.
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up. It's
Go away.
Grow up.
Yeah.
I think it's time for you to grow up. And like you said, now for me, baseball used to be my number one passion until I was like 5 or 6. And then, the Rams took over. But the thing is, baseball is still considered America's pastime. Now, I think football is America's passion. And I'm going to say it's college football and pro football because, living in the Southeast Conference area, college football is king. But overall in the States, football is king. That's it. This would be a great opportunity for baseball to be reintroduced, or in some instances, be introduced to a group of people who don't even think about watching. But this could be a case where if they structured it right, maybe do some experimenting, because this year is going to be so different from any other year, that they could actually potentially make inroads to a much younger audience, a viewing audience, because the kind of like the average age for baseball's viewing audience is like AARP, starting to think about, hey, Medicaid, Medicare. Yeah.
I'm long past starting to think about it.
But I mean, the thing, they need to breathe some fresh air into the to the league and to cater it to get the attention of a younger audience, and you have this opportunity where there's not a whole lot going on right now. They could have done something that could help them for years to come, and all they seem to be doing is just completely ruining it and making people who love baseball getting sick of it, because you don't want to see billionaires and millionaires fight, particularly when there's so many other bigger things going on.
Exactly. Well, I mean, to just put a cherry on top, so to speak. Ultimately, when it boils down to it, you look at the, people are saying, well, what about the major leaguers who aren't making all that money? They really need their prorated portion. So let's assume the prorated portion for 70 games, we'll even say that was accepted, out of 162 is roughly what, 45%. I think the baseball major league minimum salary is, last I looked anyway, was about $650,000. So you take 45% of 650, and I'm just, it's about $300,000. How many human beings on this planet actually make that much money? How many? Right? How many? And these guys, these are not poor people. Even the baseball minimum at prorated amounts is more than enough for someone to support a family for a year, where they try to get good enough to make the millions that their other colleagues are now making. And you know, Mike Trout and all these guys. I mean, I don't know about Mike Trout in this thing. He's kept pretty quiet, but you know, Blake Snell was obviously the first to set the tone for this by whining like a 2-year-old. And I'm look again. My company's named after 1956. When I first watched the Yankees when I was 6 years old. I have a deep commitment to baseball. Baseball is where it becomes America's pastime is because it's part of the culture. As much as it may not be a past, but it's deeply embedded in the culture. No one says when they have a great success, man, I just threw a touchdown. They say I hit it out of the park, right? I mean, it's like that's the level of culture it's embedded at, and these guys are degrading the culture.
Well, let me tell you, your name of your company is the 56 Group. Soon, that's going to be the meaning the average age of Major League Baseball watchers. Because as
take me out of there, the average age goes down to 48.
Marshall says the average age is 53, which is actually my age, but it's not too far off from the 56 Group. So
I'm working on it.
You're gonna have you're gonna have a double meaning to your name there soon.
Yeah, soon enough. Anyway, yeah, enough.
All right, let's move on to something else. Here is one that caught my attention for a variety of reasons. Okay, so let me get this out of the way. I think the NFL needs to officially apologize to Colin Kaepernick. I don't understand. I don't understand why it's so hard for them to admit. I mean, Roger Goodell is all over the place talking about, you know, how they're going to do better and, you know, things have to change and all this and what they're going to do. And some of it's financially. And that's great. I think all the things he said late as they are, they're good things he's been saying as of late. But this one thing is just so obviously missing is not to address Colin Kaepernick directly and just say, hey, you were right. We were wrong. We wish we had handled it better, but we appreciate all that you did and sorry for all that you had to go through until we got it right. That's not hard to do.
You'd think, I mean, he's actually, I mean, saying, I mean, when you have the commissioner saying someone should pick up Kaepernick on contract, you think literally the thing that would follow that is, look, we made a mistake, right? Yeah. We were wrong. You literally think that would be the next sentence, for God's sake. And yet it's not there. I'm with you on this one. I mean, there's not much more to say than what you said. It's like, apologize to Colin Kaepernick, and that, you know, make sure that players, when they want to kneel, can kneel. You know, you're hearing all kinds of players now saying, well, if the season occurs and people are going to kneel, we're going to kneel with them. You're even hearing coaches beginning to say that now. The problem I have with all of that stuff sometimes is it's motivated out of guilt more than anything else. You know, it's not motivated out of a commitment to the fight that Colin Kaepernick tried to fight, right? And is trying to fight. He made mistakes too. He just admitted those, you know, and
right.
So, you know, that's why, you know, we see that in our industry. Of course, we've seen all the mea culpas on we believe in diversity and we believe in it. We've seen that all over the place, but that's, you know what, that's words. Okay. And the reason that they're meaningless is because they're the words that everyone's saying because they know everyone wants them to say it. And that's it. But the actions that you take are what matter the most. And yeah, look, the NFL, to their credit, is committing $250 million to do something that they vaguely call combating racism in the NFL. But I'm not sure what that means in action terms, but at least it's a substantial financial commitment. But it doesn't cost them 10 cents to apologize to Colin Kaepernick, which is the first thing they should have done.
It's the easiest thing they could have done.
Yeah.
And the more they prolong it, the more difficult apparently it gets for these guys to admit it. You know, yeah, like I said, Goodell is apparently going around saying that he hopes that teams consider Colin Kaepernick, you know, as an opportunity to join their team. which is good. But why can't he just say, "Hey, we were also wrong"? It just seems like it shows some sort of weakness not to be able to say that and then
Yeah, it's
move on.
hard. It's hard. It's funny. You look at the response of the leagues to the different, to the crisis, the different crises, and uh, it's fascinating. It's interesting. The quietest of the leagues probably has been Major League Soccer, really. Uh, and you and I were talking about this on Vinny Merchandani's with Vinny Merchandani this morning on a video we taped with him, and you got guys now you look at them, they're taking care of the health of the players. They're they're they came up with a league format that's actually kind of appealing, given how people tend to watch soccer anyway, because they tend to watch it in tournaments as opposed into seasons, even though there are obviously seasons, meaning they love tournaments, right? So, the World Cup, look at the World Cup is a perfect example. So they came up with a World Cup-ish, or actually almost a March Madness-like format for the remaining season. We a good friend of both Brent and I, who we'll have on the show again, is Charlie Shin, who's the VP of Business Analytics, I think now, and Strategy, and was the VP of Fan Engagement, still responsible for Major League Soccer. And he said that I can't remember the number. I want to say 22, but that number actually doesn't work in a tournament. He said there was going to be X number of teams that are going to do basically a playoff kind of, round robin kind of tournament. And that's how they're going to do it in, clean and safe environments, of course, and at specific locations. And then there will be a winner. And, when it comes to, if it was baseball in the World, it doesn't work for baseball, but it does kind of work for soccer. It does work for the MLS, I think. And they're not having arguments with the players, and they're just kind of working together to try to figure out how to make stuff go. And they've been very low key the whole time, but they've been doing good works, and they've been accomplishing. I mean, that's the way you do it. You figure out in a quiet, or if you need to be slightly louder, but some sort of way to work together, to collaborate, to give the country what they need to see and hear and feel, so that they can begin to climb emotionally and hopefully physically out of this crisis, right? And so, kudos, at least to what we know, kudos to the MLS for what they're doing.
Yeah, I think I will say this: given the makeup of the league, there are not a lot of, and I don't know a lot about the league, but it doesn't appear like there's a lot of black players in the league from the U.S. Involved in the league. There are a lot of, I guess, foreign-born folks that come in. So there's something missing from the equation for the MLS that is completely foundational to NFL and the NBA, and unfortunately, to a lesser extent, the Major League Baseball. So I don't know if it's because of that, it's easier for them to put these things in place, and things seem to be working a little bit easier because that element is not a part of the equation for MLS. But for whatever reason, like you said, things seem to be a lot smoother and operating a little bit more efficiently than the other leagues, where we're seeing all sorts of things going on.
Yeah, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know the reason. I just know, to be honest, too. Look, I trust Charlie's judgment on things. I really do. I mean, the guy is arguably one of the most innovative minds in all of sports, period, and an influential guy in sports. And he, he understands. He gets the world as it is and what he has to do in that. And I think, and he tends to drive. Not all. He probably didn't drive this whole thing, but he's driven some of it, right? And so part of this, from my personal standpoint, just trusting his judgment, which I do.
No,
So,
I do too, but I do think that league doesn't have some of the complexities that some of the other leagues do. I don't know how strong the players union is in MLS, whereas we all know the Major League Baseball players union ridiculously strong,
Yeah.
and sometimes to the detriment of the overall baseball fandom. And you could say the same to a certain extent with the NBA and NFL. But I will say it seems to me the relationship between the NBA Players Association and Adam Silver and the ownership seems to be about as good as you can get.
Yeah. Well, that again, that's an interesting point too, because a lot of this boils down to the personality of the individuals leading these things. And obviously, look, Adam Silver, has been for the NBA generally. He's been a good thing, right? He's a smart guy. He took some. If you remember early on with what was the Clippers owner's name?
Oh yeah, I know you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean he took decisive
Donald
action.
Sterling.
Yeah, Donald Sterling. He took decisive action against Sterling early on in his own tenure, and basically kicked him out, right? And did what the right thing. And I think, and prior to that, from what I understand, Silver was pretty well respected. Period. Right?
Well, he learned under David Stern, and David Stern was a really good commissioner, and I think he picked the right guy to succeed him. And Adam Silver has done a great job of succeeding him. But I will say this: if you have to be kicked out of the league, it doesn't hurt to be kicked out and leave with $2.2 billion.
Yeah, I know. Well, there's nothing Silver has no legal right to take the team away from him. So
yeah, I know.
The guy owned it, right? So
we'll give you $2.2 billion. Yeah, and now get out of here, you. Okay.
you bum. Yeah. Right. So I mean, there is a lot has to do with the people at the top in these leagues, and you tend to trust the league as much as you trust the commissioner of the league, pretty much. I remember, baseball has been, the first commissioner of baseball was an insanely racist guy. It was Judge Landis.
Kennesaw Mountain Landis.
Right. Insanely racist, right? I mean, just like horrible racist. I mean,
well, he was a guy that basically reinstituted the, no blacks on teams thing.
Yeah. And he was commissioner of the league, not just like Cap Anson on a team with influence, right? So you're talking about, and these kind of things are, they're these kind of things are like astounding in terms of, the impact that individual has on the leagues and the actual impression people have of those leagues. Has so much to do with the commissioners. Bud Selig was a very weird commissioner. He did some very good things from the standpoint of revenue for baseball. Yet there were times the guy looked like an abject idiot too. And it's like you couldn't tell. If I had to, on the balance of it, he was probably good for baseball teams and owners, right? I don't know if he was good for the game, but he was good for the revenue of owners, which is, again, it's a league and it's a business and you got to do what you do. But, so you can't like write him off as this awful commissioner, because he wasn't. But it was this weird amalgam. I mean, that's what I mean. You could pick a commissioner, we could talk about him all day and we could realize it very complicated, but ultimately a lot of how fans view the sport, professional part of the sport, is based on the commissioners of the leagues and their actions at the time.
So in your lifetime, who has been the best commissioner of baseball?
Everyone would like to say Bart Giametti. That's because everyone kind of liked him, but
he wasn't there for very long, unfortunately.
No. He was probably likely to have been the best if he had been there longer, but he wasn't great either, right? There was all kinds of ups and downs with all these guys. I don't think I've lived through a great commissioner of baseball, one that I particularly liked.
I didn't like Bowie Kuhn. That's for
no,
sure.
He was horrid. I mean, but he was hard because he was narrow-minded and sort of stupid. as opposed to like deliberately malintended, right? It was just like, it was like Lane Kirkland taking over the AFL-CIO. An attorney should not run a labor union, right? Same kind of deal, right? You know, the people who should run something are the people who have a genuine interest in it as well as the knowledge to run it, right? And not the interest of their profession, the interest of their sport, right? Like, for example, you know, as much as people may have not liked him, George Steinbrenner was a great owner of the Yankees. He was the best owner to me, the best owner in the history of a sport, of a team. Maybe that's a really broad statement and probably not true, but at least in baseball, look, here's the thing with Steinbrenner. He loved New York City. He loved New York City. He just loved the city, and he would do anything to bring that championship through the Yankees to New York City. He didn't care. Here was the most telling comment, the most telling story I ever heard, beyond the fact that he turned out after he died, found out how charitable a person he was, with so many not ever publicized helping of families in the country. That was just amazing. But this was the most telling single story. So here's a guy who buys the Yankees for what? Was it 200 million or 70?
No,
million?
I thought it was 25 million.
No, I think it was a little more than that, but like 70. It was small.
I'm looking it up because it wasn't a lot of money.
It was very little. Right, look it up. And he basically builds a franchise that in baseball is the biggest by far, as the second or third typically, or occasionally first. But
oh my God,
what was it? 30?
No, I'm gonna put it on the screen. I got to go to my other machine. Keep talking, but it's
all right. So he turns this into a multi-billion-dollar enterprise. That's insanely profitable, right? I mean, just like astounding. So after he died, a statistic came out on how much money George Steinbrenner took out of the Yankees. And you know what the answer was? Not a dime. He didn't take a penny out. Every penny he made with the Yankees went back into the Yankees. Every penny, because all he wanted to do was win. He was a horrible commissioner.
All right. Are you ready for how much he paid? All right, here it is.
8.7 million. Oh my God. Oh, I'm so stupid. I could have bought that.
8.7 million. And how much are they worth now?
Over 4 billion.
Oh my God.
And now that probably more now, was they just recently with Amazon, oddly, bought back the entire network.
Right.
So that gives their net worth, or their value is increased that much more. So, but again, he didn't take a penny out. And I remember when, that doesn't make him a great commissioner. He just let
actually, I put that more on Branch Rickey, and
who wasn't even a great owner, right? But right. So that was history and circumstance combined with what Branch Rickey thought would be a great box office, not because of his charitable, and humane decision making. And Pee Wee Reese was I think he was either his friend or a total racist. I can't remember which. Steinbrenner not taking a dime out. I remember one Yankee series where they won. It was I might have been the 1999 World Series. They went to the.
Wait a minute. I need to say something to Bob. I just thought of this. I said in our lifetimes. When were you born?
Well, that's in my lifetime, though.
No,
it's not 2 years.
No,
short.
it's not.
2 years short. I'm 2 years.
Listen, Bob.
This
is what happens when you got somebody from Boston answering questions.
And you know what? Even if it wasn't with our lifetime, Happy Chandler was terrible. He's basically better for the Kentucky Derby than he was for for baseball.
Well, maybe Bob is speaking for himself in his lifetime.
I think
maybe it was Happy.
You know what? No. In his lifetime, it was Happy Gilmore. Happy Gilmore. That's what he's thinking. Happy Gilmore.
Oh boy.
So
You
yeah,
got-
so that's what I'm saying. That's an owner to me. I saw Steinbrenner crying his eyes out that he brought a championship to New York, crying his eyes out like a baby. It was amazing. I love the guy, and he,
Well, I've got to vote for who I think was not the greatest owner of all time, Georgia Frontiere.
oh God, she was horrid.
She was just. I think she might have had her. Well, I'm not going to go into
She
that.
was up there with George Preston Marshall, actually.
I'm just going to say Carol Rosenblum, who was the real owner of the Rams, who just so happened to marry Georgia Frontiere. He mysteriously died, and she became the owner after he mysteriously died. I'm not going to say anything more than that.
We'll reopen the case.
You know what's there's this really interesting we're just all over the place here, but I love this.
That's all right. Doesn't matter.
The strange relationship between the Rams and the Colts franchises.
Carol Rosenblum.
Well, Carol Rosenblum was the original owner of the Colts,
Right.
and he had just won in '71. The Colts beat the Cowboys in one of the worst Super Bowls there was, actually. And Bob Irsay had just taken over the Rams because George Reeves, the original Rams owner, died, and there was like a year where there was a family trust that owned it, and for whatever reason, Bob Irsay bought the Rams, and I don't know what was going on in Baltimore, but I think did Carol Rosenblum also own the Lakers at one point? It seemed like there were a couple of teams where the owner, like what's his face, Charles Finley, owned not only the A's, he owned, I think maybe he was the one that owned the Lakers, but there was a couple of guys that owned multiple sports teams in different leagues. And Carol Rosenblum wanted to get out to LA for some reason or some other, and he wasn't able to buy the Rams before Irsay bought it. But then somewhere along the lines, Irsay and Carol Rosenblum, they made like the trade of franchises where they just literally swapped franchises. Somebody's calling you.
Oh, don't worry. Yeah.
But anyway, so Bob Irsay went from owning the Rams to owning the Colts, and Carol Rosenblum went from owning the Colts to owning the Rams in '72.
That's like those Yankee pitchers who swap families. It's like the same thing.
It literally is, because the owners were the only ones that moved. Like Carol moved out to LA, and Irsay, I guess, moved to Baltimore at the time. All right, so that's like the first little weirdness between the two. All right, now this is the one that's most traumatic on my end. 1987, October 30th. The Rams did the unthinkable, quite despicable. They sold or traded the greatest running back in franchise history, the second greatest running back in the league history, behind Jim Brown, of course. They traded Eric Dickerson to who? The Indianapolis Colts at the time. Broke my heart. Still trying to. I think I might have gotten over it by now, but that was a tough one. Now that was 1987. Now 1999. Another blockbuster trade. This one actually worked out for us. The Rams traded away like a meaningless second and fifth round pick, and we got Marshall Faulk. So 3 of the biggest trades in NFL history, 2 being Hall of Fame top 20 running backs of all time, and the other out and out franchise swap. Rams and Colts. I love that history.
That's an amazing history, actually. It's confusing a little bit, though. So Georgia Frontiere.
Wow, Willie Mays Hayes.
Right. He's got major league.
Did you get the wild thing in that one though?
Yeah, well, I'm telling you. Well, he might have been coming up. He may have come up through the minors. She and Rachel Phelps. That's hysterical. That was a good movie, though. That's another. Someday we need to have that discussion on baseball. We kind of had it, but we should dig deep into and show clips of baseball movies.
Oh yeah.
That would be awesome. And we can show that all-time favorite that we have discussed before, the Babe Ruth story.
William Bendix.
William Bendix. That's right. I mean, he can't even like call his own shot right. How bad is that?
It was terrible.
So, I think we might want to go in the time we have left to the Wendell.
Oh yeah.
Right. Go to the letter.
I'm trying to.
Wendell
I can't
Haskins
remember
letter.
his last name.
Haskins.
Yeah.
Haskins.
There it is. All right, let me bring this completely up.
Yeah, okay.
Oops, bring this one completely up.
So Wendell currently is the CMO of the Professional Collegiate League. Those of you who listened have seen Ricky Volante and David West on our show before talking about the PCL. He was hired a couple of months ago, probably 3 really, as the CMO of the league. Prior to that, at one significant time in his life, he was the head of diversity for the PGA, right, the Professional Golfers Association, and the fascinating thing about that is, PGA obviously has been. I mean, look, I don't even play golf. When I was a kid, I tried it. I hated it. I didn't want to have anything to do with playing golf. But and I've watched it. Of course, everyone watched Tiger Woods, and when he first came up and pretty much changed the sport. But even before that, we had Arnold Palmer and Jack Nicklaus and people like that. And then, we had golfers. I think Charlie Sifford was the first black golfer.
Yeah, I remember. I kind of remember him a little bit, and then the guy Calvin Pete was my guy when I was growing up.
Yeah,
and Lee Elder was another one of those guys.
Lee Elder was the one that probably got, of all of them, the most visibility when he was playing. But the PGA to me was always the bastion of country club white privilege, right? So that's pretty much how I even saw it. And I'm a white Jewish guy, right? So, so that said, so Wendell was hired to run diversity, and last week when we were talking about the mea culpa as well. I guess the head of the PGA and I guess his wife is another major officer in the PGA, put out a whole discussion on how the PGA is becoming a bastion of love and charity and hope and so on and so forth and diversity and blah blah blah. Well, Wendell, in a very articulate, very straightforward way, begged to differ. And what we have here is literally 8 pages of no, the PGA is not a bastion and supporter of diversity. And here are all the efforts that were made to both derail Wendell, but also to disrespect Charlie Sifford, to divert attention from any other minority efforts that were being made by people within the PGA or around the PGA or supporting the PGA. And it got to a point where, when you read this 8-page letter, and anyone would like it, we're happy to send it to you. I don't understand. Let's put it this way. I don't understand why ESPN hasn't picked this up. Golf Digest did pick it up yesterday. One other publication I know is from the golf world picked it up. This is a, a significant major sport. There's millions and millions of dollars, enormous amounts of corporate sponsorships, huge following that is part and parcel of this sport. There are household names like Tiger Woods as part of this sport. Yet ESPN hasn't picked this up. I don't get it. I don't get why they wouldn't pick this up. This is what he's outlining here is pretty systematic and pretty disgusting, and is a literal effort to derail any actual efforts around diversity at the PGA. So I'm calling out not just the PGA here. I'm calling out ESPN for not having picked this up. I'm sure that Wendell, because he's a smart guy, who, if you read the content, by the way, is very respectful and very articulate, not at all going out of line or ranting in any way. And also, by the way, has very damning proof that he's laying out here. The facts are pretty clear. I don't get why ESPN has not made something of this and put it out there, because PGA has to be accountable for this. And they're not going to be if the only thing that picks it up is the Golf Digest.
Well, this right here, I mean, he was trying to put together this thing for Charlie Sifford, who, he is a pioneer. I mean, he was back there, the only black guy for a while, and he deserves to be recognized. And so Wendell was hired to, kind of make inroads and leverage his contacts to provide, bring some diversity into the PGA. I mean, that was specifically why he was hired. And so that's what he went about doing. And he's been doing this tournament. I don't know what the exact name of the tournament is, but he at that, I think at the time he was hired, he had already been doing it for like 14 years or something like this. And it was basically to expose or bring more black and brown into, to the sport of golf. And so he was hired, and I'm getting this mainly from this document he put together. So that's why, he came to their attention, and that's why they hired him, is to leverage his connections to bring more awareness and bring more inclusivity into the PGA. So one of the first things he attempted to do was to do this thing to honor Charlie Sifford, and without saying, the guy deserves it. He deserves it. So he was trying to put together this really, top-notch dinner in DC and recognition for Charlie Sifford. And he was gonna, he had worked with some of his contacts to, at Delta to fly, these VIPs in. And these are like who's who. I don't know if you can see it on this particular document, but Jim Brown, Bill Russell, Alonzo Mourning, Jesse Jackson, Ken Chenault. I mean, these are Ken Chenault is, I think probably at the time he might have still been the chairman of the board for American Express, but CEO level folks and Hall of Famers. I mean, all you had me at Jim Brown and Bill Russell. I don't care who else is coming after that. I'm there.
I'm right there with you.
So he said subsequently, this was not approved to invite these guests, and the dinner for Charlie was diminished to a humble gathering. He was told that this wasn't a time to be trying to plan a party for his friends. So obviously, this is somebody who had no idea who Jim Brown and Bill Russell and Ken Chenault and everybody else on this list. They were diminished to him trying to throw a nice party for his buddies.
It's degrading. All the
and
way
then
around.
The other one that got me was his efforts to reach out and connect with Steph Curry to get him involved in I forget the actual the group. I think it was like some kind of junior golf thing.
Right.
They try to get Steph on board to be a part of that. So he details all the things he did to finally get the connection, because remember, he did work in the NBA. So he had some serious connections. He was finally able to reach Steph and was able to get Steph interested in doing a follow up to learn more about this opportunity. Wendell then tells, I guess, his supervisors or whoever kind of at the top of the organization that he had made this connection, and the next step was to meet with Steph and work with Steph's team to put together a meeting. So I don't know who it was, that Wendell, told this to, but that person then kind of behind Wendell's back got the ball rolling, got the contact information, and ended up setting up a meeting with Steph's people and Steph and cut Wendell completely out of it. And eventually Steph ended up doing something. And so completely they hijacked all the work that Wendell had done to get that connection and to get the ball rolling and cut him out completely.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to be a combination of individuals who are just outright jackasses and institutional racism, both, right? I mean, it's sort of like, even if there wasn't institutional racism, some of these people are outright jackasses anyway, right? But that the addition of institutional racism at the PGA tells you that when you got these kind of jackasses, the results are what Wendell basically lays out 8 pages, show that's, you're making that mea culpa statement everyone's making, but you have done nothing to actually support genuine inclusion or diversity or to combat the kind of racist the racist nature of the PGA, the PGA organization. And so, to me, it's not a sport necessarily I spend a lot of time on, but that's an outrage, and that needs to be taken care of. And honestly, ESPN, wake friggin' up on this one. I mean, just because it's not NFL doesn't mean you shouldn't cover it. So
and I'll say
the athletic
PGA may not appear to be on the surface, may not look like what NASCAR looked like before Bubba Wallace and the guys. But let's look at NASCAR and say I think they're a lot farther along in this area than PGA.
Absolutely right. 100% right. And to me, look, again, but the way this particular universe works is unless the press picks it up, there's not enough pressure to get them to act in reality because they figure they can keep it keep it behind the scenes or under the rug, however they have to do it. So ESPN, The Athletic, Bleacher Report, all you guys, just Fox Sports, NBC Sports, CBS Sports, pick it up. Do something with this. Get it out there. Put the pressure on the PGA to actually change. Communicate with Wendell now. I'll tell you what. I mean, I'll start some. I don't know. The only person that in the sports broadcasting world I really know is baby Stephen A. Smith, who's part of the team, right? Part of our team. Maybe he can launch if he can launch a rant at the level that he launched because he's upset at us right now, then that'll be over by tomorrow. PGA will not be racist anymore by tomorrow, right?
Well, I will also say this doesn't necessarily shine a positive light on the biggest, best GOAT of a golf player that's been around for the last 2 decades. I mean, Where's Tiger in all this?
Yeah, nowhere. Well, you know what? Again, I'm not trying to defend him because he's sort of an indefensible type of person, but but he is a great golfer. But maybe he doesn't know about it yet. It's possible.
I will say this: if he doesn't know about it, then he doesn't want to know it. I mean, he just doesn't want to know.
Fair enough. I'm not believing. I have no interest in defending Tiger Woods. So
hey, I love Tiger as a golfer. I mean,
right, exactly.
I loved Sunday afternoons and seeing him out there dominating But you look at him compared to Bubba Wallace, who is nowhere near as accomplished in NASCAR as Tiger is. Nope. I mean, there's only one person I can think of that you can even compare Tiger to, Jack. Bubba is nowhere near that level of person in his sport that Tiger is in his sport. But look at what Bubba has done, and then look at what Tiger hasn't done.
And with Bubba, came out and with it was the edifice was pretty cracked already because it fell really fast, right? And I mean, it's amazing. Like, what was in maybe 3 or 4 days, and the whole thing started like collapsing to the ground and sweeping the crap out, at least the beginnings of it. So it's pretty amazing. I'm pretty
Yeah, well,
so,
Tiger had the support of like the Jimmy Johnsons and the Dale Earnhardt Jr., so that helps. But Tiger is those guys all rolled up.
I know.
No, so it shouldn't take anybody else really, but Tiger. But
yeah, is right.
All right, well, hey, that's another supersized edition of Excuse the Intrusion. Hey, sometimes you just got to talk it out. And should we try to leave it on a more fun, friendly note and let our buddy, let's see how our newest protege is doing. See if he's feeling any better about things.
Actually, right before you do this, though, we should talk about next week.
Oh, you do that.
So we next week are talking history. And to do that, we've recruited a man who I don't think you know, but you will know him after next week. His name is Don Zminda. Don is actually a leading baseball historian. He's written dozens of articles, multiple books on baseball history. He is a longstanding leader in the SABR organization, and not a definer of sabermetrics, but he's he has been a strong historian within their group. Don also happens to be a classmate of mine from college. I've known him since '67. A little shorter time than, for those of you on the happy hour, than Steve LeMay, but not much. And next week, and Don's currently writing a book on the 1920 White Sox, the Black Sox. Exactly. And so next week, Brent, me, Don are going to be talking baseball history. This is a show you do not want to miss. He's a great, aside from knowing his stuff, he's a great guy.
I want to see if Stephen A. feels good about that. Let's see what Stephen A. has.
Bring him back. I hope he's not mad at us.
We'll see. Here we go. Maybe he is mad.
I'm having a very bad day. I'm in no mood. This, today, is one of the worst days that I've had in a long time. I'm not in the mood to play with anybody. My brother Bomani Jones is in another booth looking at me. I love that brother. I don't want to talk to you today. I've got producers who have been very, very good to me. I've got bosses who have been very, very good to me. I've got co-workers that I love. I don't want to talk to anybody. My godson, Jonathan Barnes, is sitting right in front of me, and I don't want to look at him. I'm ticked off. I mean, this is just, and Sean Farnham, but if you are a Knicks fan, this is the equivalent of being kidnapped, stored in a basement, being tortured, and then they let you out when you're of no use to anybody. I mean, you just can't make this up. I'm telling you right now, I got an attitude with everybody.
I guess he hasn't gotten over it yet. So
No.
maybe next week.
I hope he's in better mood.
He told us right up front he's having a very bad day and he didn't want to talk to anybody. So it's...
Judging from his personality, he could have a lot of very bad days. So.
Oh well, we hope that baby Stephen A. Has a better weekend and has a good week, at least better than this past week apparently. So
Yeah.
in the meantime, I'm Brent Leary.
I'm Paul Greenberg.
We're the CRM Players, and we'll see you next week on multiple occasions. But you definitely want to check out next Friday. That's going to be fun.
Oh, a blast.
See ya.